All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Passion in Motion podcast. It's me, your host, Mutsa, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Jonathan Keenan. Hi, Jonathan. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How about you, Musa?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So today, for those watching, we're talking more about Peace Corps and Jonathan's experience in his career journey and sort of the things he does. So I'm very excited to get into this one. But yeah, let me just give you the opportunity, Jonathan, to just say hello to everybody and like kind of give a very brief spiel about yourself, and then we can kind of get into the meat of the episode. So over to you.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. So, my name's Jonathan Keenan, and we'll get into how everything got to where I am right now. But to fast forward through all that type of stuff, right now I've got a full time position with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So, FEMA, we do disaster relief work. And then on the side, I've got a nonprofit that helps out Peace Corps volunteers as they come back from service and they try to figure out what comes next in their careers called RPCVnexus.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to get into that. So as we get started, Jonathan, when you were growing up, what's the career that you said, "Hey, I wanna be this thing when I grow up"? Like, what is your I guess I don't know. I guess your ambition when you were growing up. Like, what is your I wanna be this when I grow up.
Yeah, so it was one of those things if I had zero idea. Like there was
Mm,
always like, oh, this sounds cool or that sounds like a fun time. And when I went to college, it was a matter of I'm going to be a social studies teacher because I'm good at history. I know that type of stuff and sure fine whatever. So went into college at Buffalo State College as a social studies ed person, but there you start your first couple years in the topic. So I was a history major first and then you convert over.
mm.
But going in my third year, my friends were saying, "Oh, well," as they were a grade ahead of me, that they were going to graduate. I was like, "Oh, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so maybe we'll see what happens, and I'll graduate early." Because credits and things like that were just yeah. So went in my advisor's room, and he's like, "So what are you gonna do after college?" Like, oh. And he said, "All right, you're going to stick around for a fourth year. You're going to take on this East Asian minor type deal, and you're going to have a good time." Like, great. We'll see what happens. No
Yeah.
problems there. Stuck around, got into East Asia and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was also part of a history club on campus for um, the History Honors Program, Phi Alpha Theta. And it was a situation that we were doing a fundraiser to go to a conference one day.
Mm,
And during that fundraiser, my another professor, the person that was in charge of the organization, was like, "Hey, John, go talk to that person over at the table there." I'm like, "Okay, what's Peace Corps?" And she said,
mm.
"You don't know what Peace Corps is?" I'm like, "Oh, no." It's like, "All right, go talk to him. You're gonna go do it. You're gonna love it. No questions asked." And she was very much that finite person. Like, you do the thing as I tell you to do the thing. Like, great, why not?
Okay.
So went over, talked to the person, and at the time there was this thing called Masters International Program where you could go to grad school, do 1 year there, go do Peace Corps service 2 years, and then come back and wrap up grad school. Well, got into grad school, got cold feet, and did Peace Corps as I was going to do anyways, and just did Peace Corps. And it was from that, it was like, okay, now I understand a lot more of what's going on in the world. I can see and meet people, and I can get out of the history books too.
Mm.
Love me a good history book, don't get me wrong. But it was definitely one of those things of I read so much about different people and peoples that I wanted to go and experience it myself. I wanted to see what it was like in the books that I was reading. So, despite having just worked on East Asia and despite having some understanding of Chinese and German language, they sent me to Africa. They sent me to the country called Cameroon, which people ask me, "Oh, you're going to Cambodia?" I was like, "No, I'm going to some place called Cameroon. It's like just south of Nigeria, around the equator." And they're like, "Oh, have fun with that." And the reason was more for the fact that was from Buffalo,
Mm.
and we love our cold. I definitely love my cold and appreciate that. So going to the equator and seeing that heat, it was going to be good, but definitely something that I needed to adapt to.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Well, I have a lot of questions into it, but just the first question that I actually have is: you said you're a history buff. I love history. What was like your favorite history? area. Like I love Russian history. I don't know why, but that whole I mean African
Yeah,
history too is cool, but
yeah,
when I was like, okay, learning about history, Russian history was something that really spoke to me for some reason. So
yeah.
anyway, yeah, what was
So
your area?
so check out this guy. His name's Koshinga, Kongxi, and he is a Japanese Chinese pirate lord. His father
Oh.
had more money than the Chinese emperor back in the early 1600s. So, like, if anything needed to happen, the emperor would go to him and be like, "Hey, so rather than being an illegal pirate and causing chaos and everything else,
Hmm.
the crown is going to hire you to be our naval protector type deal." And the
Oh.
pirate lord's like, that makes sense to me. I can do everything legitly. I can have the official seals and I can take out my opponents with authority. So he had this son, Kashinga, who was initially born in Japan because that's where his mother was from. And right before the Tokugawa shogunate started in the 1600s, go check out the TV show or definitely read the book Shogun.
I loved Shogun. Shogun was cool.
Yeah,
One of my favorite
s-
series. Yes, I loved Shogun.
need to watch the show, but the book was the best example to me of what Peace Corps is to somebody that never served Peace Corps. Because
Mm.
you have the Dutch guy who goes and lives in Japan, doesn't understand the language, doesn't understand the culture, doesn't understand anything, and has to integrate as much as possible throughout the entire book. And you see that. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Like, I get what he's going through.
Wait, was he Dutch in the book? Because in the show he was English.
In the book, he's Dutch. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why
Yeah.
they
So
made that choice in the show.
he's
Huh.
maybe for language purposes, and he was sailing on a English ship. I do believe that.
Okay.
Yeah. But so Kashinga was this pirate lord that when the and this is going to be the part that I can't remember. I believe it was the Qin dynasty moved in around in the middle of the 1600s, took over China, and Kashinga was trying to defend things like that. That didn't work, and he retreated to Taiwan. And this goes into fast forward into the 1930s and the 40s with the Chinese Communist Party moving in and things like that. Parallels are there because after he left, he routed the Dutch, conveniently enough, the Dutch from the island of Taiwan and the island of Formosa, which his father had given to the Dutch. So he was at that treaty signing, and so came back, took the place over, and it was the first time that an Asian military force defeated
Mm.
a European military force.
Mm.
Yeah, so even the battle itself was just very, very cool. So he was able to live out his days, which unfortunately for him was only a few years because he died of syphilis.
Oh,
So
that's so.
not not a great ending to the story, but at the same time, the build up to that point, that's actually what I did my college thesis on. So it was just like a very cool thing. And especially around the time that this was when Pirates of the Caribbean had come out. So, of course, watching those
Oh.
movies. And now I'm studying what it looked like on the Pacific side of the conversation.
I might look into that because I really enjoyed watching Shogun and like just learning more about Japanese culture and like kind of what yeah. And I mean in a previous episode I spoke to, I'm sure it was, I think it was Janina who I spoke to, and just about that. That also highlighted to me that everybody needs to experience being a minority somewhere else.
Completely.
And I guess
Yeah.
that's what also a Peace Corps is, because that experience alone, where you have to adapt to a new environment, new people, a new language, a new way of living, that whole experience, even if it's short, can really mold you into a new person. Like it can open your mind into so many different ways, and
It does.
I think it opens many pathways of thinking. So I think that's kind of what Peace Corps is. So moving back
Yeah.
to the Peace Corps conversation, you
Yeah.
moving to Cameroon. So what are the things that you did, let's say, to prepare to go to Cameroon?
So, like I said, I studied East Asia. I had no idea about the African continent other than some 1800s type stuff, and then going into World War II because college kid, you know.
Yeah.
So I looked up as much as I could. I looked up Wiki. I looked up the country books as well, and I learned what I could. Foods were going to be drastically different than anything I'd experienced before, which I was excited for. Um, Growing up, it was always a thing of Western style foods. My family's Irish, German, and things like that.
Yeah.
We would cook Italian. My mom makes, in my opinion, the best lasagna. But and St. Patty's Day was a week ago too, so
Yeah.
it's one of those things. So I was excited to see what that was, and was also excited to see just kind of what the culture and the people were like. Again, as a history kid, but learned about the 250 languages and the 170 different communities. I learned about football, and for us in the U.S., it's soccer.
Yeah.
I grew up watching the Buffalo Bills and watching hockey with the Buffalo Sabres. So transitioning to soccer was going to be a big shift for me because I knew of the sport, didn't really understand the rules.
It's
So
a better sport, though, at least.
that'll be a different podcast. To me, it's baseball, but
Okay.
baseball is a chess game that everybody has to play, and that's why I'm bothered by the fact that the National League no longer allows for the pitcher to bat. Different conversation though.
Hmm.
Going back to Peace Corps and soccer, we were there for the World Cup during training. So
Oh.
2014, we were able to watch the World Cup, and it was just like again that special moment, being able to go to the bar with my cohort and watch it, and also watch it with my host family as well. Because I know
Hmm.
for the last match of Germany and Brazil, like we got to it, and it just was a very cool thing of being able to watch the game and then go back and like still be able to watch and celebrate with my host family as well. So it was a
Yeah.
fun time.
Africans love soccer. I love soccer. Soccer is
Yeah.
big, especially World Cup. Oh my God. World Cup
Yeah.
is, it's always fascinating to me because Americans would typically think that the Super Bowl is the biggest sporting, and it's like, you guys have no idea what a World Cup is. Like,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
Like,
And then we were
yeah.
there for like 2 years after that for the Olympics as well. So it was like it was
Cool.
boom and boom. Or no, that was the following year, I think, actually. Something like that. But like
Yeah.
it was one of those things of there for two big soccer events. Like it was so cool.
That is awesome. Cool. So when you, let's say, so when you got to find out about Cameroon, and
Yeah.
then by the time you were able to go, how much time was in between that?
So I think I got my letter in, let's call it January, February, and it was around that time that I put my 2 weeks notice into. I worked at a butcher shop back in high school and college, so I remember giving my notice there, and then so I and then I left at the end of May. So
Okay.
I had probably about 4 or 5 ish months, and I know that I'm probably building an extra time for because I don't remember exactly when I got my letter, but yeah,
Yeah.
3 to 5 months.
Okay. No, that's cool. So first stepping into Cameroon, which city did you go to? Like, where exactly in Cameroon? Where are you
Yeah.
at?
Yeah, so we got into we got into Yaoundé uh, in the evening time type deal. So we just got off the
Hmm.
plane. We left Philadelphia, went to Brussels for the layover, then came down to Yaoundé.
Cool. Do you remember like what your first big kind of culture shock was when you landed
Yeah,
there?
yeah. So we got off the plane, we get onto the bus and things like that, and this one woman, uh, Natalie, we were standing on the bus, and she looks out the window and says, "I think that's my backpack." And we all look out because like people had been helping us put the backpacks onto the bus, and we're
Hmm.
sleep deprived. We have no idea what's going on. I'm like, "What do you mean your backpack?" It's like that guy's got my backpack, and like he was walking away from the bus.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, someone should do something about it because I'm like 5 people back from the entrance of the bus, and everyone's like, yeah, 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 we should. I'm like, okay, move. So like people get out of my way and like chase this guy down, and like in the no French that I could remember at all after learning French, German, Chinese. I'm like, hey, that's my backpack to the guy, and I
Hmm.
had like sprinted like a good 50 yards to catch up to this dude, and he's just like, quoi, je ne comprends pas. And I'm like just motioning and things like that. I'm not letting him leave. And one of the trainers had actually come up and like talked to the guy again, probably in French, and we got the backpack back. And I remember him grabbing my hand and we walked back to the bus, no problem. And then my first witness of village justice took place as people then surrounded him, which felt bad about, but also I guess that was just what was going to happen after that.
Wow. That must have
Yeah.
been, damn. Okay. That is
Yeah.
that is a bit crazy.
Yeah. So like that was my first 45 minutes in country. I'm like, okay, so need to respect people, need to take care of stuff. But at the same time, it was that very large realization that the community was also there going to be there to support us. And
Mm,
that was a huge theme that carried out through the rest of service as well. That like if something happened, the community was there. And it was always that like I don't think that we have that in the United States outside of your direct family and your direct friend groups of it takes a village.
yeah,
And it's just so profoundly important in Cameroon and other African countries as well, both from what I presume. And I was able to visit a friend who served in Malawi as well. But like one of those things of the community's there to support each other.
yeah.
And for one to grow in an African society, it requires everybody to pitch in.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that is true. We are very big on. So we have a word we use back home. It's like Ubuntu. That's kind of like the word that most people say. It's like I am you because you are me type of thing. Like
Mm,
everybody, even like that whole it takes a village to raise a kid. Like
yeah,
it's just all about that. Like communal. We're very communal, very
yeah,
community oriented, very like my neighbor is my family type of situation. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's kind of the vibe.
Yeah, and like it's to the point that in Cameroon, like there's this song that everybody sings like at huge gatherings, things like that. It's like, "Hey, we are together, we are one,
Mm.
nous ensemble," because Cameroon's bilingual. So it's like one of those cool things of like at big celebrations, like people are just chanting this of like, "We are together, we are one people."
Yeah, no, that's the pride of being African, I would say. So
Yeah.
what's the kind of work that you did whilst you were there? Like what did your day to day kind of look like?
Yeah, so I mostly worked on grassroots soccer, so HIV prevention and awareness, and we did that in a whole bunch of different schools and trained trainers that were gym instructors that they'd be able to go and do it in their classes. And then we did a girls soccer tournament at the end of the first year to like bring everybody together to kind of celebrate. And it was a great event, but it also made me realize of okay, well, we had the funding to do it this year, but it's not going to be sustainable for the next year. So
Mm,
had to cut the big tournament celebration part to focus in on the HIV part because that was the more important thing for that community because wanted to make sure that people were safe and um, it was also something that the schools could take on themselves because much lower cost, less logistics. Then the second year, I worked on a large scale market gardening program. So, like in 5 different communities, 20 women each. And this was out on the outskirts of town. And I came to working on this project because just visiting friends and things like that at the hospital and the health center, noticed that people from outside of this community, the people that are from the Akum community, were in the hospitals more so than other people. So, talked to a friend of mine, and he was saying, "Yeah, well, we've got cattle and we've got rice, but we don't have the vegetables and things like that." So there was the issue of poor nutrition and a food desert. So
mm,
worked with him. We found a project manager who was a farmer that could kind of oversee this while being there and while I was in town. And then also working with the delegation of agriculture, working with the restaurant ma to show them how to prepare the food after it was ready. Department of Agriculture to go literally from seed to table and all the steps in between on caring for the seeds, how to harvest seeds from the plant once it's prepared, how to put the thing into go from the nursery to the field itself, so on and so forth, reading the water tables, and then also talking with one of the market managers that was in the market in the center of town. This way, they could work with people to send the product to the village center as well, and be able to sell it there. So it's just kind of like this complete cradle to grave type of a situation that we focused in on to make sure that the community would have access to proper vegetables because they focused mostly on cattle rearing
okay.
and they didn't have refrigeration. So even if they bought the stuff, it wouldn't be fresh and it couldn't keep. And that was the biggest part of the entire conversation. So we made sure that these women banded together from their different groups into a confederation that they would trade amongst one another and then also to work together to kind of meet that end goal of building themselves up, because one of the contingencies that I made them sign on to, so to speak, was that at least half of the yield from all the crops had to go to the table. Because if they just brought everything to market, sure, they got the money, but then they're back at ground zero.
Mm. No, that's really interesting. And did you feel like there was a lot of community backing of that vegetable initiative?
Co-op? Yeah, yeah, there was, and we needed to get it because it was a Muslim society. So we needed to go to the local leaders. We need to go to the traditional leaders as well to say, "Hey, this is what we're proposing," and they donated lands and equipment and things like that. And then also had to have the conversation with the husbands, with brothers, to gain their permission to work with the women in the community. Um, and after the project, I had already left by the time that food was starting to come to the table, just
Yeah.
because that my services had ended. And it was a thing where my counterpart Booba had given me a call and said, "Hey, Jonathan, the women are always asking of you." And there's this one guy that was in the community that had kind of foo-fooed the project at the beginning, saying, "No, we're not going to be part of that," but had later joined on. And he became one of our greatest champions for the project after that fact, because
Cool.
he had taken his son to the doctor's office, and the doctor said, "Hey, what are you feeding your son? Because kid's getting big, he's getting healthy." It's like, "Oh, well, we're feeding him carrots and potatoes and onions and tomatoes and things like that, like they're doing with the rest of the group." It's like, "Keep doing that, please. Your son is healthy because of this reason." And it was just like that very gratifying thing that this man who had initially said, "We not not very interested. Please keep that away." To, "We really need to have this in our community." And at after the first year or so, um, again, like 6 9 months after I had left, the group had grown into 6 or 7 different groups. So it was one of those things of one or two more groups had joined on.
I really love that. And that for me is why I always ask, like, okay, did the community back this? Because once people buy into
Yeah,
something, especially if they see the benefit of it, it can really like shoot up. You know, it can really like
yeah,
do its thing. And because I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a cynical person, but one of the reasons why I sometimes I'm a little I don't know about like international development
oh yeah,
organizations, you know,
yeah,
USA, Peace Corps, all these
yeah,
things. It's like, okay, when you're coming in to do this work, are you coming in properly? Like, are you coming in with the right intentions? Are you coming in and hoping that people also buy into the work you're doing? Because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing has to be sustainable.
hmm,
Once you leave, people have to be like, we have to keep this going, and they do because
yeah,
that's kind of what you just give them the tools to say, would you guys like to do this? They say, yeah, this
yeah,
sounds great.
yeah,
Okay, we're gonna help you, whatever. And then
yeah,
that's just I those are the ones that I value the most. Like, okay,
completely.
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
important to me.
No, and I 100% agree with you. As Peace Corps volunteers, we go in and we're supposed to do what's called a community needs assessment. This way we can go and we can talk to people. And I called it just like my beer chats, because I would go and I'd sit down at a bar and I would just talk to the pause that were there, and like just people in the community, because that was the best way to understand what was going on. What do people actually need? And it was from that could get a better sense of it all, because we were taught during initial training that we're going to plant the seeds underneath trees we will not sit under, that we're creating the shade for other people, because once we leave, that tree still needs to thrive and survive, to your exactly to your point. So if I come in and I just give somebody a car, well, great, what am I supposed to do with it? I have no idea how to drive this thing, I have no idea how to get gasoline for it, and I have no idea how to be a mechanic to take care of the car. So things I'm more happy and things like that with a food project because of the buy-in and things like that, but also the ability for the community to take it over very easily. The delegation of secondary education was able to take over the grassroots soccer program for the HIV work, because we reduced the scope and the footprint of it. The soccer tournament, that was amazing. That was a great show and tell at the end of the day. But exactly to your point, the community couldn't take that on themselves, so needed to find ways to then make it within reality. And especially with the food project, okay, this is what the community is asking for legitly or expressively. How do we make sure that it is for them, as compared to something that I'm just going to say, let's do this? But I'm able to hear them and see what's going on, and then work with them to be able to build it.
No, I really love that, and yeah, that's to me, that's a signal of okay, this was good, this was done the right way, and people took it on. So I'm sure, I'm not sure if it's still going on today. I hope it is,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's one of those things that would last a much longer time than just coming in, doing whatever you want, and then leaving, and then a few months later, it's it's gone, that type of thing. So no, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Because so you were in Cameroon for 2 years, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay, cool. So before we move on, what
Yeah.
was like your favorite memory from that time period? Like, what's that one memory that's like you wake up sometimes and you just smile,
Yeah.
like, man, that was great.
I miss the host family that I stayed with. Estella and her kids were amazing. I miss Mommy Corn Chef, Rebecca. I would go into the market and then it's morning, so like it would be like oatmeal type deal
Hmm.
in the U.S. or in the West, and it's a mix of corn and palm oil and beans, and just like this thing. And I'd come and I'd pay, I don't know, like 50 sefa, 100 sefa for a bowl, so like 17.35 cents. And she'd call somebody over to get banana for me, and because like she knew that I would always eat my corn chop with banana. So like it's sitting with the people, it's having these conversations, working with my counterpart Levette and everyone else. It's and Booba. It's that type of a thing. When I came back, and I'm looking for it right now. I don't have it on my desk right in front of me, but a few months in, um, I love drawing, and I would always have index cards with me that I would doodle with during service, meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
And when I came back 3 months after being back in the US, just I had sketched out just from memory, just like walking down the path and being able to see the car park on my left hand side, the soya place where we would get meat with Booba on the right hand side, and like the path that we would take to go to the different high schools, the delegation of secondary education where I'd meet with people all the time, and the farms as well for my second year. I was like, I miss the presence. I miss the people. I miss the food. I miss just that way of life. We have the clock is king in the US. And while I brought that with me to Cameroon, and I've probably picked it back up while I've been here, it gave me that relief. It gave me that sense of community and that depth to the community as well. I loved being in village and working and talking with people.
That is cool. So after those 2 years, did you go back immediately to the US?
Yeah, yeah. I came back immediately to the US. I did grad school, and I had promised myself that I was going to go back to Cameroon right away. My ideal was within 5 years. I felt that was a practical goal. One of the hardships was that I had lived in the Northwest region, and that underwent the um, Anglophone Francophone crisis. I'll call it that for
Mm.
ease. And 3 months after I had left in October, things really took a turn for the worst.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so unfortunately, I've not been back, and then COVID hit. But when I talk to people that are from the community, it's always that yes, no, we don't know if it's going to be safe enough. So I can definitely go back to Yaoundé. I can go back and visit some places, but I want to get back to the village, and I want to be able to see and walk that again.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I mean, before we jump into like what you did after that, I was just
Yeah.
so when you did come back to the US, was there like any reverse culture shock of being back after 2 years? Was there anything you were like, man, we are weird for doing this? Or the others like, man, I really missed this. Like, I mean, was there anything that you're like, wow, I can't believe now I'm
Do you
like
know how many bottles of ketchup there are in the condiment aisle?
they're a lot.
Walking into the grocery store. So I'm from Buffalo. We love, and our second church, so to speak, is Wegmans. Maybe third church after Ralph Stadium for the Buffalo Bills. But it's something of going to Wegmans. It's just kind of like a thing of okay, throughout the day, and walking into Wegmans and seeing the variety of different items. It was a little overpowering. Um, Seeing all the different options when before it was like either I buy tomatoes from this person or I buy tomatoes from that person, and that was my choice.
Yeah.
I didn't have beefsteak tomatoes, Roma, cherry tomatoes, that type of thing. I think the biggest option was did I want Irish potato or did I want cocoa yam? So like between those options. or did I want corn fufu, rice fufu, or water fufu? So, which is perfectly fine. And being able to have access to that was great. Being able to flip the switch on and know that the electricity was going to flip on was gratifying. And it was that humbling experience of knowing that, okay, I have experienced a month without electricity when the power was out at different points, and celebrating with people when the electricity did come back on, and hearing the shouts and the music starting to play. And now coming in and just knowing that I can flip the switch and I know that it's going to happen. I still have at certain points in that memory of, all right, that party's going off in my mind of being able to do that in Cameroon, especially when the toilet would flush.
That's funny. It's just funny to me that for you, that one of the biggest culture shocks is just the extent of American capitalism. It'll just
Yeah.
you get back and it's like, oh my god, we
Oh,
we have a
completely.
lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like to the point that when I talk to people who work in the refugee field and things like that, or and when I had studied that, that was one of the biggest transition situations that they would have to work with incoming immigrants, asylum seekers, and migrants as well, of coping with that and having those types of both large utility infrastructures, but also societal infrastructures like the busing system and metros, when you don't have to, um, and requiring a car when typically like you have to walk everywhere, or you jump on a
Yeah.
motorcycle or in a car to go 3 hours to the next town or something like that. Um, so it's there's a lot, but those are the ones that pop out immediately.
No, no, man, I love that. I love that. I mean, that's all fascinating to me because I mean, it is even for me when I first came. Like, yeah, there was a lot. I'm like, wow, I never knew that there was the extent of American capitalism is shocking if you're not used to that kind of, it wasn't too bad for me, but I know for a lot of people it can be like really like, wow, I did not know that there's 7 types of this. So I did not know a chicken can grow that big. That I mean
You're
GMOs and stuff, right? So
yep, yep,
it's
yep.
just yeah, that stuff is always so fascinating. So okay, so after Peace Corps, you back in grad school. What happened after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so did grad school. I went to the Fletcher School at Tufts University for the School of Law and Diplomacy there, and initially I was going for maritime stuff. I went back to my roots about East Asia because this was around
Mhm.
the time of the Seven Dotted Line with Southeast uh, China Sea, and I got into interest with the Arctic program, with international trade and maritime type stuff there. Um, Went from that, and it still went to several different conferences across the world, which is again very very eye opening. Um, saw saw Iceland, saw Russia, saw Germany, and it again through those things like wow, I've really gone some places. But from those conversations and from those experiences, both in school and the conferences themselves, it shifted my interest towards sustainability. It shifted it towards human security, having electronic security, having food security, having water security, and health security, especially.
Yeah.
So those were the projects that I really worked on. And during my last semester, I took a class on international disaster relief. And that was the
Mm.
one that really flipped my switch. Like, this is what I want to do, being able to help
Mm.
people out and things along those lines.
Okay. Was that like a growing passion for you, like helping people in certain situations? Like, did you always have that in you, like growing up, or is that something that like kind of developed over time based on just your life experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoyed helping people out. Yeah, I enjoyed volunteering as a kid. I did scouts and did stuff with my church. Um, but it wasn't something that I was overly avidly involved with, so to speak. But I think that it definitely picked up a lot during Peace Corps service because, like, okay, this is fun, and I'm able to see the product as well of going and helping out a community itself. So looking at that and then getting into project management, monitoring and evaluation, and seeing change management itself of how do we go from having an issue and finding ways to go towards a solution.
Mm. Okay, no, that's really cool. So I also want to dedicate some time to talk about NPC,
R-
the
RPCV
RPC,
next.
not
Yeah,
NPC.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you're good. You're
RPC.
good.
Yeah. So okay, I mean, let's because I know that's focused as well on, as you said,
Yeah.
how to help people who've left Peace Corps transition into the workforce, or like what
Mhm.
to do next and things like that. And I'm sure that's again because of your experience in Cameroon. So
Yeah.
let's start with the name, why you named it that, and then how you came up with this organization. Like what led you to say I want to start this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am an RPCV. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer.
Oh,
And
that's what it means. Okay,
that's where the
return
first
Peace
part
Corps
comes
volunteer.
from.
Okay.
And Nexus comes from the bringing together and trying to find ways to connect. So back in 2019, I was on the Washington, D.C. board, and NPCA, the National Peace Corps Association, so the big umbrella group, came to us and said, hey, we need help creating a professional development arm and doing a mentoring program. Can you help us? And we're like, love to, but can't, since we're a locality based group. So I had put it up to vote with the group, and they said, we want to stay local, and that's perfectly fine. So I finished up my term with the RPCVW, the uh, Washington, D.C. crew, and started working on this project. And this went into COVID, and other things happened in life. And then finally in 2023, I was able to launch. But at that time, I launched as Pax Progressus, Peace Through Progress, the Latin
Mm,
for it. And I took it in a different direction. And when I launched, I reached out to all the different Peace Corps volunteers, and somebody came back to me, Lion G, said, hey, like what you're doing, but we need to shift. We need to turn this into a nonprofit to properly help out Peace Corps volunteers, because volunteers will be more attracted toward the nonprofit side, because that's what we really want to do at the end of the day, is help other volunteers out, and that's the mission.
yeah.
And I said, yeah, that makes absolute sense. I had no idea about how to start a business and stuff like that, so I'm like, LLC, that sounds familiar. Let's do with that.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't about that. It was trying to make sure that we help the people themselves.
Hmm.
So he and I, we started RPCVnexus, and we were trying to figure out names, and we landed on RPCVnexus because it's easily identified within our community, RPCVs, the Returned Peace Corps volunteers, and Nexus because the bringing together. So we support volunteers as they come back, as well as return volunteers as they transition into whatever career stage that they go into next, whether that's just getting into the workforce, whether that's trying to find graduate school or find options to go into the workforce. Coming from Buffalo, I had zero idea about what Peace Corps was. I had zero idea of what international relations and international development was. I didn't know what FEMA was at the time. A whole bunch of different aspects that I did not understand. And it was
Mm,
through these experiences that I opened up my eyes. So, coming out of Peace Corps, seeing the issues that volunteers had, first through my own experience and then through conversations that people didn't know what was going to come next, it was that conversation of, how can we work on this? How can I make sure that those who come behind me have a better opportunity than I did? This way they know what the pathway is, or at the very least, the potential pathways that are before them, so that they can then make better and more informed decisions than the ones that I was able to make. So,
mm,
by bringing people together, by creating that cache of knowledge and information that people can then trade back and forth, creating that network for people to have conversations with, like what we have on the WhatsApp group of 800 people now, and that's just in a couple months. Between having a mentoring program for 61 pairings across the world, actually, both current volunteers and return volunteers, and doing free resumes, doing career support and things like that, especially the past 3 months, and we've been doing this for 2 years, it's been really prevalent. It's also been a huge joy of being able to help these volunteers out as they try to figure out what does come next. Who should I talk to? How do I connect with people? How do I apply for a thing? And for the drastic most part, it's been very beneficial for the people that have come to us. And I know that there's been a couple times where I wasn't able to provide the support for individuals, and that was a low moment. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I wasn't able to do quite so much for this individual, which is frankly a good thing, because that meant that their resume or their preparation was so good that
yeah.
they didn't need me. But also for all the other people that were like, oh, wow, they were able to see that transformation from the before to the after and be like, all right, we can do this now. And it's been further gratifying when they reach back out and say, hey, I got a job and I really want to thank you because I used the resume that you helped me build.
That's really awesome because Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when people go through these things, when you come back now, because again, you're gone from home for like a couple of years, right? You're
Yeah.
completely out of touch with what's happening in the USA,
Yeah.
except for like the news and maybe talking to the family and stuff. But you're not there, and
Yeah.
so yeah, having that maybe that safety net of when you arrive and you have someone helping you, like just okay, let's set you up. Like what works? What can we do? If you're interested in going to grad school, if you're interested in getting to the job market, what kind of that's no, that's really awesome. So, um, do you try like before? Is that what is that one of your aims? Like right before someone is sent somewhere, do you are you able to get that information like okay this person's about to go to Cambodia, let's just say, are you able to like oh by the way when you come back and you need assistance we are here for you, like is that kind of how you start or do you mostly like how do people find out,
Yeah.
maybe let me say that, how do people find out
Yeah.
about the organization first, like do they find out before they go or mostly
Yeah.
after they come back?
So that's a great question. That's one we're working through right now. Working on building an MOU together with Peace Corps itself. And kind of from that into the side is that we're also trying to work with the countries themselves to say, hey, if you need a resume workshop, if you need someone to come in and talk about the transition after service, this way the volunteers have that opportunity, we can do that for you. One thing that we're currently building out is the creation of like a career journal. This way, we're able to have conversations with volunteers that are just starting service now and track their progress as well of just getting into service, just getting to site, but also what's in their mindset of this is where I want to go after Peace Corps service because 2 years goes by pretty quickly and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot that needs to be prepared, especially in the 6 months into the end of service because that's when you really want to start having that consideration of what comes next because it takes about 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12 months to find a new job, and unless people are going into graduate school, they still need to think about applying for that, and if they come back to the US in the summertime they need to be thinking basically a year ahead that they want to apply to grad school. So by having these relationships with Peace Corps and with the countries themselves, we can start having that conversation of, hey, we are here to support your volunteers. We're here to support you as a country. This way, more people are going to be attracted to coming to your country and serving there because they know that after service, there is that support system that we did not have beforehand.
Yeah, I know that's really really important. And I love that that's something that you're doing because I can even relate it to myself. Where like international students that come to America after school, like as soon as you graduate, there's like a period of time in between graduation and when you're waiting for your work permit to come in where it's like that's that little it's like a 2 to 5 month spell depending on how long the stuff
Mhm.
takes where like you just don't really know what's happening and so I used to sometimes wish that there was somebody or some organization that could just be there to like okay we just know you just graduated we're just gonna like help you out even if it's just like okay come live here for the next couple of weeks get your thing and you can now
Yeah,
find yourself so anyway I think that is really important to do
exactly.
so my other question now is given everything that's happening politically, I mean again we all know like let's say that USAID for example that the biggest international development
Hmm.
organization in America has been kind of defunded, has been cut down essentially. With Peace Corps, how has everything affected Peace Corps? Is it still something that is it still active in the way that it used to operate? um just so if anyone's interested and they're listening to this
Yeah.
podcast, like is that something that's still currently going on? Has there been any disruptions to it? What's that been like?
So I'm not. I'm just going to say flat out that I'm not a Peace Corps representative. So
Yeah,
these
100%.
opinions are
Yeah, I'm
my
just
own, and I
curious.
know we've chatted about that.
Yeah.
So I'm finally making that plug. There's concern from the current volunteers because one of the biggest draws that they would take from is the PEPFAR grant, which I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for. But this was created under the Bush administration to focus specifically on HIV work. And that was a huge thing through USAID that Peace Corps volunteers can't tap into anymore for funding for HIV and health projects. There's a lot of uncertainty, as there is with the rest of the international development realm. But um, luckily for Peace Corps volunteers, is that they are still there and they're still serving. And I know this is March 25, 2025, so we'll see how things change even next week. But I'm trying to remain very optimistic, but with caution as well, that Peace Corps is going to continue. and we'll see how things play out. I think that Peace Corps itself can, as well as the other service components, AmeriCorps, military service, national service as a whole, they're considered. And this is an event that I did earlier this morning that I had attended, is that national service needs to be tapped into more strongly by the United States. And by that, I mean both federally as well as in private sector, in education, in nonprofit realms, and things like that. Because Peace Corps is a testing ground, is a training ground for leaders, for innovators, for idea people, for those that have a passion to a mission to help other people out. And I mean, even AmeriCorps, they're able to show that a dollar invested now into AmeriCorps has a return on investment of $17. The hard thing is that that's going to be in a couple to a few years from now. So the hardship is that politicians are trying to cut budgets and things like that, which that is their job and different conversation. But Peace Corps volunteers have that same concept. We have an international understanding better than anybody else does. We know contextual conversations, we know different languages, we know what if we've served in right now there's 60 different countries that we're currently serving in or that they are currently serving in, so that's at least 60 different languages. And I say it that way because I know that there many of them will all speak French or all speak Spanish and other things like that, but the local dialects that we pick up are drastically important.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've got interest in tapping into with our PCV Nexus in the future as well, of how do we connect those individuals with those important skills, and what I always pitch as a Swiss Army knife of skill sets, because we can take a Peace Corps volunteer and we're thrown into different situations, irregardless of the resources, irregardless of the environment, irregardless of the project. And if I'm a betting man, then I'm going to say 9 times out of 10 that that project is going to succeed because we're able to look at things at a holistic manner of beginning to end. Who is involved? Who are my partners? What are my resources? And how do I make sure that this is going to be successful? Because this is going to be something that's going to continue after I leave. So I want to make sure that it is left behind in a manner that is going to be productive and useful.
I love that. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, no, that's really cool. So, if a Peace Corps volunteer is listening to this podcast and they want to get in touch with your organization, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, nice and easy. RPCVnexus, NEXUS.org. And we are the one stop shop for professional development of Peace Corps volunteers, of response volunteers from Peace Corps, virtual as well, and Peace Corps staff. It's something that feel free to reach out. Nice and easy through job support at rpcvnexus.org or even Jonathan at rpcvnexus.org. We're always trying to make sure that we're providing the services that Peace Corps volunteers, both current and returned, are looking for. This way, they've got a landing ground as they come out of service and throughout their careers. I've worked with people that are going into becoming VPs for different agents, not agencies, but for different businesses, going from one VP position to the next. I've worked with people that are getting high up positions at the UN. I've worked with people that are becoming teachers, going into numerous different fields. And we've got a cast of resume reviewers and coaches now that people can tap into to make sure that they're able to get the experience from a mentor that they are looking to learn and understand, to make sure that they've got the best possibilities ahead.
That's really awesome. Awesome. No, that's if you're listening to this and you're a Peace Corps volunteer, we just plugged you in. This is the best. This is the best place to be if you really need help with transitioning from, I don't know, from either service or job to job or whatever. I really do feel like, yeah, RPCV Nexus is your place to go to.
Thanks.
Well, I
Join
I
the
appre-
Nexus, join the network.
yeah, join the Nexus. Yeah, exactly. And it sounds cool too, right?
Right.
Nexus. That's always a cool name. So I really appreciate you telling your whole story. It's been very fascinating, and I always love hearing stories about how people start from one place, go to another place, and it just 2 years can completely change your life, right? Or like a conversation with somebody can just completely change the trajectory of your life. Someone just saying, "Hey, go to that table over there, sign up for Peace Corps."
Yeah.
You're gonna, I don't know if you've gone back to that professor and be like, "Hey, you were right."
Yep. Oh, completely. And I tell her that
Yeah.
all the time. I had coffee with her back in December. So it's one of those things of whenever I go back home, I make sure to reach out and be like, yeah, you pushed me and you've made me drink the Kool Aid.
So I mean, it just I love that about life, that it can honestly. That's also what keeps me motivated when
Yeah.
things are not going the way I want them to go. It's just that, then just tomorrow I could have a conversation with somebody and my whole life could look completely different from how it looks. So that's kind of something that keeps me grounded, and I hope that that also does the same for other people out there, because it's true. It it,
It
it,
is.
it can really just be someone saying, "Hey, go talk to that person over there,"
It,
and
yeah. It feels good helping somebody out. It feels good putting a smile on somebody else's face. And I mean, in my day to day job, I work on disaster relief. I hate the job, love the reason I do it. But it's a thing of how do we make sure that somebody else is able to stand back up?
yeah, no, that's exactly it. That's true. I mean, there's nothing better in the world than helping somebody else.
Right?
That's
Exactly.
that's the best. That's I think that's the reason why on earth, actually, to help others, because in turn someone will help you out one day, and that's you
Yeah.
know that's just how it
Yeah.
goes. So yeah, well, Jonathan, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Thank you for telling your story. I feel like a lot of people will be able to relate to it, and I found it very fascinating. I found it very, like, yeah, I there's a lot more we could talk about for sure. So
Yes.
but yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak on your journey. A very good journey too, and I can't wait to see where the journey keeps taking you. So um,
Hey,
with
stay tuned.
that, yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, with that, any final words from you, Jonathan, before we close out?
No, thanks so much for keep having me join today, Mutsa. This was a fantastic time and definitely something that we have so many different windy pathways in life, especially coming out of Peace Corps service. I mean, I never would have imagined that I would be working for FEMA, working on doctrine, working as a chief planning person during hurricane season, things like that. But Peace Corps enabled those things to happen just by getting the ball rolling and putting me into those initiatives to say, hey, this is project management. Here's how to start thinking. And then grad school told me how to properly think. And then after that, like it's just one domino on top of the other. And if you don't know where you're going, that's okay. The path will come up and take the leap because people have done it before you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nothing's new under the sun. People have done it
Yeah.
before you. Just reach
Yeah.
out to those people, and you never know what could happen.
You really
So
do.
I think that's a perfect place to end the podcast. So thank you, everybody, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Peace. Thank you so much.